Heading into the 25-26 season, Nebraska didn't receive a single vote in the AP preseason top 25. Yet, by the end of the regular season, the Huskers were ranked 11th in the country, the highest ranking in program history. While several factors contributed to their success, here's Big Ten Coach of the Year Fred Hoiberg crediting the most important one.
Our defense has carried us really throughout this entire year. We don't have unbelievable individual defenders. Nate Lenzer, our defensive coach, has really put a system in that protects players. If you have one guy out of position, out of place, the whole thing falls apart. And, that's where our guys have done a great job and really grown to be one of the top defenses in the country.
But how does a team lacking size, athleticism, and NBA-level talent build a defense ranked 8th in the nation in defensive efficiency? In this video, I'll use film and data to break down the X's and O's of Nebraska's elite defense and the tactics opponents use to beat it. I'm Coach David Abupal, and this is Takumi Hoops. Modern offenses use pace and space to score before the defense can organize. In the 25-26 season, transition offense generated .156 points per possession more than half-court offense. Recognizing this threat, Nebraska developed one of the best transition defenses in the country, not only limiting transition opportunities, but also making it difficult to score in the few they allow. It's driven by 4 key factors. This may sound counterintuitive, but the first factor is actually their offense. Most of Nebraska's shot attempts come in the half court. They score with elite efficiency, and they rarely commit turnovers. This allows them to control the pace and finish possessions, which limits transition opportunities before they even start. The second factor is how they balance the floor. Here's Fred Hoiberg explaining their approach.
We want to generate second chance opportunities, but you can't do it and jeopardize what you're doing on the defensive end as far as transition. And when we get back and we load, we're pretty good.
After missed shots, Nebraska consistently prioritizes getting back on defense rather than crashing the offensive boards. They rank in the 99th percentile in opponent fast break points allowed, but in the 19th percentile or lower in both offensive rebounding and second chance points. And when they do offensive rebound, it's done strategically.
We've got our rules. We have what we call our crash zone, and then our corner guys that we sweep out of the corners and we go through the elbows. We don't want to take the wrong path.
Essentially, Nebraska designates the area below the free throw line as a rebound zone. When a shot goes up, players inside the rebound zone crash, while players outside get back on defense. Here, Nebraska takes a perimeter shot outside the rebound zone. As a result, the 2 players outside retreat to the backcourt, while the 3 players inside crash the boards. Taking another look, notice how the rebounders jam the blockouts on the high side to get into position for long rebounds while maintaining ball U basket positioning. This is really important because if the opponent gets the rebound, Nebraska can immediately match up and disrupt transition outlets. In a similar possession, notice how the rebounders also close space on the blockouts and bury them under the rim without fouling, improving their chances of securing the rebound, especially on long misses. Here, Nebraska takes a perimeter shot inside the rebound zone. The 2 off-ball players crash, but the difference is that the shooter gets back on defense. This allows the shooter to stay focused on his shot while remaining in position to match up if his defender leaks out after a flyby. In this possession, Nebraska takes a paint shot inside the rebound zone, which is treated differently than a perimeter shot. When this happens, the rebound zone shrinks to the paint. As a result, only the players in the paint crash because perimeter players don't have time to impact the rebound. Aside from the rebound zone rules, Nebraska also gives freedom to strong rebounders like Sam Hoiberg, Rank Mast, and Braden Frager to crash the boards even when they're outside the rebound zone. The third factor is how they recover. Players outside the rebound zone act as safeties until their teammates inside the rebound zone can recover. When an opponent secures the rebound, the short safety stops the ball, and the long safety protects the rim and ensures no opponents get behind him. In this possession, Sam Hoiberg and Price Sanford are outside the rebound zone. On the flight of the shot, they retreat to the backcourt. And on the rebound, short safety Hoiberg picks up the ball, while long safety Sanford sprints back to the paint to cover the rim run and provide help. This delays the break, buying time for their teammates to get back. If a small inside the rebound zone like Cale Jacobson here is ahead of the ball and closer to it than the safeties, he takes the responsibility to stop the ball. This slows the break as early as possible and frees up the safeties to cover other threats. Here, Price Sanford and Rank Mast are covering the corner fills while also plugging the gaps. If a long safety is caught in a size mismatch in the paint, Nebraska counters this with scram switching, which is when two off-ball defenders switch to eliminate a mismatch. In this possession, long safety Jamarcus Lawrence gets cross-matched onto a big while protecting the basket. Rank Mast is the first big to recover, and instead of matching up with an opponent on the perimeter, he immediately scrams Lawrence out of the post to cover the wing. While the safeties do their jobs, players who are inside the rebound zone sprint back to match up with the remaining opponents, with an emphasis on loading to the ball and building a wall to prevent paint touches. The fourth factor is how they communicate. Here, all 5 players are pointing and talking to ensure that every opponent is accounted for and is matched up with a defender. This is especially important when facing an elite scorer or a hot shooter. In multiple games against Iowa, Nebraska prioritized locating and picking up Bennett Sturtz in early transition. The most reliable way for offenses to generate high-value shots is through paint touches. Alabama head coach Nate Oates backed this up with data showing that possessions with at least one paint touch generated between 0.4 and 0.7 more points per possession than without one. That's because once the ball gets into the paint, it tends to either lead to a rim finish or collapse the defense, opening up spray-out threes. We saw how Nebraska prevents paint touches in transition by building a wall. Now let's look at how they do this in the half court. Assistant coach Nate Lenzer's solution was a modified version of the no-middle defense, a system popularized by Chris Beard's teams at Texas Tech, and one that helped Baylor win a national championship in 2021. And it worked. In the 25-26 season, Nebraska ranked in the 92nd percentile or higher in keeping opponents in the half court and making it really difficult to score there. Following an overtime loss to Nebraska, Iowa head coach Ben McCollum discussed the challenges that Nebraska's no-middle defense posed to his team.
They're so heavy side, and you drive in middle and you run into their legs, and it's just like, where are you going to go? It's like, I don't know what to do. So then you drive baseline, but then they bring the double team, and so that's a problem. Theirs is unique. Theirs is a really good defense. It's really good.
The best way to understand this defense is to divide the court into thirds and analyze how they defend on the perimeter and against 3 key actions. When the ball is in the inner third, Nebraska follows pack line principles to keep it out of the middle. On-ball defenders use a flat stance with cushion, prioritizing containment over pressure. Defenders one pass away are in the gaps, ready to stunt and recover on penetration. Defenders 2 passes away are in the lane, ready to protect the basket. And here, notice how the helpers are in zone, not man-to-man. As their checks cut away from the ball, the helpers talk and point to match up with opponents as they move through their zones. When the ball is in the outer thirds, on-ball defenders use an angled stance to keep it out of the middle. At the wing, they angle toward the sideline. At the corner, they angle toward the baseline, basically inviting dribble penetration. This effectively turns the sideline and baseline into extra defenders, shrinking the space the ball handler can operate in. Again, notice how the helpers load to the ball and are in zone, not man-to-man. Instead of staying with their checks as they cut, the helpers talk and point to match up with opponents as they move through their zones. This combination of on-ball defenders funneling the ball baseline and off-ball defenders zoning up allows Nebraska to send help early because the penetration is predictable, helpers are always in position, and help rotations are clear. Now let's take a look at how Nebraska defends the first key action: penetration. When opponents submit to the no middle angles with baseline penetration, the low man, which is the weak side defender closest to the basket, shifts to the lane to cut off the drive before it reaches the paint. Once there, the on-ball defender and low man aggressively trap the ball along the sideline, using high active hands to make any pass out as difficult as possible. Here's Fred Hoiberg talking about the importance of active hands.
Just hand activity, Wilson. When we get deflections, that's when we're at our best. You may have a breakdown, but if you have activity with your hands, you can save the day.
If opponents try for a layup or a dunk, the low man contests at the rim using verticality without fouling. While sending early help against baseline penetration prevents paint touches, it also creates a 3-on-4 disadvantage away from the ball. Against 5-out spacing, the three helpers load to the ball and zone up on the opponent's space on the perimeter. Against 4-out spacing, the sink man, which is the next weak side defender closest to the basket when the low man is engaged, drops to cover the low man's check with ball U man positioning. The remaining two helpers load to the ball and zone up on the opponent's space on the perimeter. An exception to these help zones is if an opponent cuts to the paint or the strong side. During this baseline drive with 5-out spacing, Nebraska starts with three helpers zoned up on the opponents spaced on the perimeter. But when Northwestern's Jaden Reed shifts to the strong side with a fill behind cut, Rank Mast abandons his zone to take away the spray out. This changes the numerical disadvantage on the weak side from a 3-on-4 to a 2-on-3. In a similar scenario, when Penn State's Caden Mingo makes a wing cut to the paint, Jamarcus Lawrence abandons his zone to take away the layup. This changes the numerical disadvantage on the weak side from a 3-on-4 to a 2-on-3. When opponents break through the no middle angles with slot or wing penetration, Nebraska follows the same rules. During this slot penetration with 4-out spacing, the low man arrives early to trap the drive before it reaches the deep paint. The sink man drops to cover the low man's check with inside positioning. Berke Buchtengel stays home on the strong side corner, and Braden Frager loads to the ball and zones up on the two opponents spaced on the perimeter. Now let's take a look at how Nebraska defends the second key action: post-ups. When the ball is in the inner third, Nebraska fully fronts the post to deny the entry pass. When the ball is in the outer thirds, Nebraska 3/4 fronts the post to discourage the entry pass and has weak side helpers load to the ball to prevent a lob. If an entry pass gets through, just like with baseline penetration, the low man arrives on the catch and teams up with the on-ball defender to aggressively trap the ball along the sideline, using high active hands to make any pass out as difficult as possible. Against 4-out spacing, the three helpers load to the ball and zone up on the opponents spaced on the perimeter. Against 3-out spacing, the sink man drops to cover the low man's check with ball U man positioning. The remaining two helpers load to the ball and zone up on the opponents spaced on the perimeter. After penetration and post-ups, opponents often look to spray the ball to the weak side to exploit their numerical advantage. Because the ball has a long distance to travel, Nebraska has more time to recover. Their zoned-up helpers anticipate this, sitting in the passing lanes to generate deflections and steals. Sam Hoiberg, in particular, has a real knack for this. When the spray out does get through, the nearest zoned up helper sprints to arrive on the catch and cover the ball, and the rest of the defense communicates and scrambles until all opponents are covered, allowing them to reset. On the catch, Nebraska reads the opponent. Against efficient, shot-ready players, they use a flyby to run them off the three-point line. Against inefficient or unprepared shooters, they use a controlled closeout with a high hand and angled stance to discourage the shot and influence the direction of the drive if it happens. Nebraska can't consistently prevent three-point attempts in these scramble situations, but they use multiple efforts to ensure that those attempts are contested and off rhythm. Here, Nebraska sends multiple closeouts followed by a solid contest, significantly reducing the quality of this three-point attempt. After missed shots, Nebraska does a phenomenal job ending possessions with gang rebounding, and as a result, limiting opponents' second chance points, ranking in the 87th percentile for both. After this missed shot, all 5 defenders find a body to hit first and box out before pursuing the ball. Now let's take a look at how Nebraska defends the third and final key action, screens and handoffs. Nebraska switches these actions 1 through 4 up to touch, prioritizing pressure over containment. For off-ball screens, defenders switch into denial to disrupt passes. For ball screens and handoffs, defenders switch into chest pressure to make both the ball handler and screener uncomfortable and constrain their movement. At the 5, Nebraska departs from classic no-middle defense, opting for neutral to passive coverages to contain the ball, protect the paint, and prevent mismatches. Here, to defend these off-ball screens, Nebraska uses catch coverage, with Rank Mass stepping out at the screen level with an extended hand to disrupt a potential pass while his teammate recovers. To defend this off-ball screen, Nebraska uses drop coverage, with Rank Mass remaining several steps below the screen level to protect the paint and be ready to help. For ball screens involving the 5, classic no-middle defenses like Texas Tech often use ice coverage into a late switch. Nebraska takes a different approach. Here, to defend this side ball screen, Nebraska uses catch coverage. Sam Hoiberg abandons his no-middle angle to send his opponent into the screen. Rank Mast then contains the ball handler near the screen level with active hands until Hoiberg fights over and recovers. Since this coverage puts 2 defenders on the ball, low man Price Sanford shifts over to tag the roll, and Braden Frager zones up on the weak side until Mast recovers. In this possession, Nebraska defends this middle ball screen with under and jam coverage. Rank Mast stays connected with the screener, creating space for Jamarcus Lawrence to meet the ball handler on the other side. This avoids a numerical disadvantage away from the action and results in a contested fadeaway. When we zoom out and watch a complete possession, it's easy to mistake Nebraska's man defense as a zone defense. Here, with all this switching and zoning up, it took me 3 watches before I realized that Nebraska was in their man defense. Even Synergy mistakenly classified this possession as zone defense. But Nebraska also mixes in 2 key zone defenses at unexpected moments in dead ball situations to disrupt rhythm. The first zone is a tandem 2-3 matchup zone. Notice how they intentionally disguise it as a 1-3-1 zone, selling it so well that it even fooled the commentators.
Right now they're sprinting out into a little bit of a 1-3-1 zone look, trying to confuse the Illini.
If we take a closer look, the principles of the 2-3 zone become clear. 2 guards are positioned at the top, 2 forwards are positioned near the wings, which is higher than the classic 2-3 zone defense, and 1 center anchors the paint. When the ball is above the free throw line extended, the 2 guards work in tandem. One pressures the ball while the other denies the high post or provides support on middle ball screens. When the ball moves to the wing, the strong side forward stunts toward the ball to take away the immediate shot and buy time for the nearest guard to rotate over. Once the guard arrives, he bumps the forward back to his zone. I had to go back 2 seasons to find this clip. When the ball moves to the low post, Nebraska transitions immediately into their man defense, with the center and the strong side forward trapping while the remaining players zone up. After the spray out, the defense is matched up. The second zone is the 1-3-1 zone, which Nebraska runs much more often. With 1 defender at the top picking up at half court, 3 lined up from wing to wing, and 1 at the basket, the formation pushes the ball out of the inner third and into the outer thirds, which aligns perfectly with their no-middle principles. When the ball moves to the paint or the corners, rather than trap, Nebraska matches up in their man defense, to avoid becoming overextended. Fred Hoiberg credited the 1-3-1 zone for their win over Vanderbilt in the second round of the 2026 NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Nate asked, he said, what do you think? What do you think about the 1-3-1? And I was a little hesitant at first, but we had to do something to change up their rhythm. We did a good job changing the pace of it at a time where we really needed it.
After losing their lead to go down 3 with just over 4 minutes remaining, Nebraska went to the 1-3-1 zone, disrupting Vanderbilt's rhythm and holding them to 0 points over the next crucial 1 minute and 30 seconds to seal the win. As I mentioned earlier, Nebraska does a great job of disguising their 2-3 zone as a 1-3-1 zone, but 2 signs give away which zone they're actually in. The first sign is how the ball handler is defended as he crosses half court and initiates the offense. In the 2-3, the 2 guards at the top remain in their zones. In the 1-3-1, the guard at the top picks up the ball near half court. The second sign is who occupies the middle zone. In the 2-3, the 2 guards rotate in and out of the middle as the ball moves. In the 1-3-1, the 5 stays anchored in the middle. The goal of any great offense is to generate high-value shots consistently. Now that we understand how Nebraska's defense works, let's take a look at how it influences their opponent's shot selection. For penetration, forcing baseline and trapping allows Nebraska to take away the most efficient shots, dunks, layups, and free throws better than anyone in the country. For post-ups, trapping on the catch makes Nebraska one of the best post-up defenses in the country, ranking in the 99th percentile in limiting opponent post possessions and the 97th percentile in opponent post points per possession. While some opponents lean into Nebraska's no-middle strategy, many avoid it, electing to run their offense in the inner third. So it comes as no surprise that nearly 38% of opponent field goal attempts are above the break three-pointers, ranking in the first percentile. But defense is about trade-offs. To take something away, you have to give something up. The first trade-off is high efficiency at the rim. While Nebraska's emphasis on defending with verticality reduces shooting fouls, opponents convert over 60% of their rim attempts against them, which is 6% above the national average. The second trade-off is contested mid-range floaters and jump shots. Nebraska allows opponents to take over 6% of their field goals from the baseline mid-range, ranking in the 20th percentile. But they could live with that because it's the least efficient shot in basketball. The third trade-off is catch and shoot three-pointers. Creighton head coach Greg McDermott highlighted this after a blowout loss to Nebraska.
There's a reason Nebraska gives up more threes than anybody in the country. That's kind of their philosophy. They're going to send you hard to baseline. They're going to trap it. If you can get it out of there successfully, you're probably going to get a decent look. Their second efforts are really good with a late challenge.
Since trapping and catch coverage require 2 defenders, opponents look for sprayouts to the weak side perimeter. When these passes get through, the numerical disadvantage leads to a tremendous amount of three-pointers, ranking in the 3rd percentile. This is much harder to live with than contested mid-range attempts, but as we saw earlier, Nebraska makes these shots much more difficult with multiple efforts, ranking in the 95th percentile in opponent three-point percentage. Nebraska's top 10 defense powered one of the best seasons in its program history, yet opponents still found weaknesses to exploit. Let's take a look at the most impactful ones. The first weakness is Nebraska's double coverage on penetration and post-ups because it creates a numerical disadvantage on the weak side. Opponents with the ball exploited the numerical disadvantage with sprayouts. Here, Northwestern initiates a post-up with a 3-out alignment. The trap leaves Sam Hoiberg zoned up against 2 opponents spaced on the weak side, so Northwestern sprays out to the corner for the open 3. In this possession, North Dakota initiates a baseline drive with a 5-out alignment. Again, the trap leaves Sam Hoiberg zoned up against 2 opponents spaced on the weak side, so North Dakota sprays out to the wing. This time, Hoiberg recovers, but Nebraska doesn't rotate fast enough to defend the swing for the open 3. Opponents off the ball were active too, using cuts, duck-ins, and off-ball screens to beat the weak side help. Here, Purdue initiates a slot drive with a 4-out alignment. The trap leaves Jamarcus Lawrence zoned up against 2 opponents spaced on the weak side, so Purdue's CJ Cox uses a fill-behind cut to not only create a better passing angle, but also to increase the size of the zone that Lawrence has to defend, leading to the open 3. This time, Illinois initiates a baseline drive with a 5-out alignment. The trap leaves Braden Frager and Cale Jacobson zoned up against 3 opponents spaced on the weak side, so Illinois' Tomislav Ivasic uses a wing cut to get Jacobson to drop and then quickly taps the ball to the corner for the open 3. In this possession, Eastern Shore initiates a post-up with a 4-out alignment. The trap leaves Price Sanford and Cale Jacobson zoned up against 3 opponents spaced on the weak side, so Eastern Shore uses a wheel motion followed by a wing cut to confuse Jacobson and get an easy layup. Here, Purdue's Braden Smith clears out his teammate to create a double gap and initiates a slot drive with a 4-out alignment. The trap leaves Sam Hoiberg zoned up against 2 opponents spaced on the weak side. Purdue's Fletcher Lawyer then makes a fill-behind cut to receive the outlet, so Nebraska starts to recover to their checks. Take a look at Rank Mast. While he's recovering, Purdue's Oscar Clough ducks in to establish deep paint position and gets the layup. Later in the same game, Nebraska fronts Purdue's Trey Kaufman-Wren posting up on the block, and low man Sam Hoiberg shifts over to discourage the lob entry. While this is happening, Purdue sets a down screen on Hoiberg to free up Purdue's Fletcher Lawyer for the 3. Taking another look, not only is Hoiberg distracted with his help responsibility, but there's also no one to pick Lawyer up on the other side of the screen because Nebraska uses a passive off-ball screen coverage with the 5 as the screen defender. That brings us to the second weakness. Nebraska's neutral ball screen coverage with the 5 as the screen defender because it creates a numerical disadvantage away from the ball. Opponents used a myriad of coverage solutions to exploit this. One solution was to attack the space away from the screen defender. Purdue did this very well, especially when combined with roll and replace action. Here, Purdue uses a ram screen to delay the defense before flowing into a rush-in ball screen. Purdue's Braden Smith makes 2 reads. 1, his defender is unconnected and focused on the screen. And 2, screen defender Rank Mast is waiting on the other side at the screen level, creating a double gap here. So Smith rejects the screen, attacking the space away from the screen defender. As a result, low man Sam Hoiberg, who's initially responsible for tagging the roll, is forced to trap the drive instead. And Berke Buchtengel, who's initially responsible for zoning up on the 2 remaining players, is forced to tag the roll instead. Meanwhile, Purdue's Fletcher Lawyer uses a replace cut to relocate to the perimeter. After Mast recovers on the roll, Buchtengel has no time to return to his zone responsibility and defend the first pass, leaving Lawyer open for the 3. Later in the same game, Purdue runs the same action, but this time uses a Varejao screen, which is when a screener flips the screen angle just before setting it. Purdue's Braden Smith recognizes that screen defender Berke Buchtengel doesn't have enough time to show on the other side of the screen, creating a double gap here. So Smith accepts the screen, attacking the space away from the screen defender, and finds Lawyer open for the 3. Another solution is to accept the screen and then attack the screen defender. In this possession, Purdue runs twist action, which is a ball screen followed by a second ball screen with a flipped angle to loosen up the defense. Purdue's Braden Smith splits the coverage and blows by the slower Rank Mast, leading to a 4-on-3 advantage and the alley-oop. Here, UCLA sets a step-up screen, which is a flat screen that sends the ball handler toward the sideline. UCLA's Sky Clark turns the corner on the slower ranked Mass, and teammate Brandon Williams seals low man Cale Jacobson with a Gortat screen to take him out of the play and clear the lane for the layup. Another solution is to accept the screen to draw 2 defenders, and then play through the screener. Here, Northwestern uses a ram screen to flow into 77 action, which is 2 consecutive ball screens. Nebraska defends the second screen with catch coverage, and Northwestern's Jake West makes a pocket pass to teammate Tyler Kropp on the short roll. This creates a 4-on-3 advantage, and no one covers the ball. Low man Sam Hoiberg shifts over to tag the roll while ranked Mass recovers, but he holds his position in the paint. Berke Buchtengel zones up on the 2 opponents spaced on the perimeter. Ideally, he'd stunt at the ball to make the roller hesitate, but the exchange action and the following corner cut draw him away from the ball. This leaves Kropp open for the jumper. About 10 minutes later, Northwestern runs the same action to play through the short roll, but this time screen defender ranked Mass recovers to trap the drive with low man Cale Jacobson, creating a 3-on-2 advantage. Price Sanford zones up on the 2 opponents spaced on the perimeter, but Northwestern uses another corner cut to draw him in, leading to the spray out for the 3. In this possession, Minnesota runs a middle ball screen. Low man Cale Jacobson shifts over to tag the roll, and Sam Hoiberg zones up on the 2 opponents spaced on the perimeter. However, instead of rolling, Minnesota's Jalen Crocker-Johnson pops out to the slot. Hoiberg doesn't rotate, and Nebraska gives up the open 3. Another solution is to accept the screen to draw 2 defenders, and then play through an outlet. After this side ball screen, Nebraska does a great job of rotating to defend the roll, but with Jamarcus Lawrence zoned up on the 2 opponents spaced on the perimeter and loaded to the ball, Michigan State throws ahead to the 2 side for an open 3. In this Iverson set, Purdue runs a ram screen into a side ball screen. When Nebraska switches the action, Price Sanford gets caught behind the roll, but the ball handler is unable to find a passing angle. So Purdue throws ahead to the middle outlet, who finds a better angle and then hits the roll. Low man Sam Hoiberg is not only at a size disadvantage, but is late to tag the roll, and Purdue gets the open layup. And one last solution is to set the screen low near the paint. Here, Purdue's Braden Smith establishes position in the mid-post and then flows into a low side ball screen with the strong corner empty and the weak block filled. He draws 2 defenders and hits the roll for the dunk. This is effective because low man Price Sanford is supposed to shift over to tag the roll, but he's preoccupied by the threat of his check on the weak block. Also, as a team, Nebraska doesn't have enough time to react anyway because the roll has a much shorter distance to travel to the basket. A few minutes later, Purdue runs the same action, and this time, low man Cale Jacobson is in position to tag the roll, but there's no sink man to cover the weak block, freeing up Purdue's Jack Benter to get deep paint position and the hook shot. In another approach, Maryland uses a 1-1-3 alignment to neutralize Nebraska's no-middle strategy. Maryland's Andre Mills then gets downhill and comes off a flat ball screen at the nail for the layup. A couple of minutes later, Maryland runs the same action, and Nebraska sends 3 defenders to build a wall, so Maryland's Andre Mills sprays out to the pop for the open 3. The third weakness is Nebraska's lack of elite size and athleticism, which opponents exploited through size mismatches. Following Michigan State's loss to Nebraska earlier in the season, head coach Tom Izzo talked about the missed opportunity to seek and capitalize on mismatches.
They did a good job of switching, and I didn't think we took advantage of that enough.
One way to hunt size mismatches is during the chaos of transition. Here, Ohio State bigs repeatedly sprint to the rim and seal smaller cross-matched defenders before the defense can organize. Nebraska fronts the post, but there isn't enough time to send backside help, leaving the lob entry wide open. There are also many ways to exploit size mismatches in the half-court too. One tactic is to exploit Nebraska's switch 1-4 ball screen coverage. Here, Iowa starts with an empty ball screen to get Iowa's Tavion Banks a favorable matchup. As Banks rolls and seals his defender, Iowa's Bennett Sturts throws ahead to teammate Cale Combs to improve the passing angle. With a smaller defender and no backside help, Combs delivers a perfect lob entry and Banks draws the foul. And here's another example of Oregon running the same action and achieving the same results. Another tactic is exploiting Nebraska's help defenders. Here, Oregon starts with a baseline stagger to initiate a post-up with a 3-out alignment. Low man Jamarcus Lawrence shifts over to trap on the catch, and sink man Cale Jacobson drops down to protect the weak block. Oregon's Sean Stewart recognizes the smaller Jacobson in space, focused on the ball, so he ducks in to get deep paint position and the hook shot. Penn State repeatedly found size mismatches against help defenders with simple ball screens. After each screen, Nebraska's low man arrives on time to tag the roll, but he's overpowered by the bigger opponent, giving up easy layups again and again. And one last tactic is to simply isolate and bully smaller primary checks. Here, after Rutgers' Emmanuel Ogobi gets deep paint position, he easily overpowers his smaller defender for the dunk. This time, Ohio State's Bruce Thornton goes coast to coast, driving right through his smaller defender for the layup. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you have any suggestions for my next video, share them in the comments as well. I'm Coach David Abukbul, and this is Takumi Hoops.